Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And hi, my name is Muhammad Zakwan Haris bin Rafizal, and me and my groupmates Adam Haris bin Khairuddin and Muhammad Haikal bin Muhammad Kuzairi are going to present about relative clauses. So what is relative clauses? A relative clause is a type of dependent clause that provides additional information about a noun in a sentence. It describes, identifies, or explains more details about a person, place, thing, or idea. So how do we know that the sentence is a relative clauses? So by the presence of relative pronouns, which are who, whose, whom, which, and that, and then relative adverbs, which are where, when, and why. There are two types of relative clauses, which are defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses. So now we're gonna go to the defining relative clauses. Defining relative clauses tell us which nouns are we talking about. So it's divided to two parts, which are the relative pronouns is the subject of the clauses, and the relative pronouns is the object of the clauses. For the first part, relative pronouns as the subject. So we use who for people, which for things, and that for both people or things. Relative clause can come after the subject or after the object of the sentence. So if we use relative pronouns as the subject in the relative clause, we cannot drop the relative pronouns, as the meaning of the sentence will not be clear. Example, after the object of the sentence. Sentence goes with, the girl has a sister who is a lecturer at one of most prestigious universities. So a sister here is the object for the girl in the main clause. What I mean by the main clause is the whole sentence. So who here is the subject of the relative clause. So the orange one is the relative clause. So who is the subject for the whole relative clause after that. So after the who, what do who tell? So who explain about the object of the main clause, which referring to a sister from the whole sentence. Okay, and then for the second part is the after the subject of the sentence. So the sentence goes by, the book that inspired me was on the shelf. So the book here is the subject of the main clause, I mean the whole sentence, and then that replace the books as the subject of the relative clause, which explain about the book that was mentioned before. So that there is the subject of the whole relative clause. After that is the subject of the whole sentence, of that sentence. Okay, for the second part is the relative pronouns as the object. So it is the same, we use who for people, which for things, and that for both people or things. So relative clause can also come after the subject or after the object of the sentence. So we can, but here the difference is we can drop the relative pronouns, as the meaning of the sentence will not be affected. We gonna see the example after the object of the sentence. So here, Aish loved the sweater that I bought for him for his birthday. So the red one is the relative pronoun and the orange one is the relative clause. So I here is the subject for the relative clause, followed by bought, which is the verb of the relative clause. So that here is the object of the verb in the relative clause, which referring to the sweater, which is the object of the main clause. So we see that the sweater is the object of the whole sentence. So that here is placed after the object. So if we drop the relative pronouns, so the sentence goes by, Aish loved the sweater I bought for him for his birthday. It is also correct, because the meaning doesn't change at all. For the second example, so we're gonna see the relative pronouns after the subject of the sentence. So the example is, the bag which I bought last week was stolen. So the red one is the relative pronoun, and the the orange one is the relative clause. So I here is the subject in the relative clause, followed by bought, which is the verb. Basically the same like the previous example. So which is the object of the verb in the relative clause, which is referring to the bag. The bag is the subject in the main clause. So we see here that the bag is the subject, and then which is after the subject. So that's why we use the relative pronoun after the subject of the sentence. So if we drop the relative pronouns, the sentence will go by, the bag I bought last week was stolen. So it is still correct because the meaning doesn't change. Okay, so now we're going to go to the second type of relative clause, which is non-defining relative clauses. Non-defining relative clauses give us extra information about something. Basically, we just don't need this information to understand the sentence, but it's just the extra information. Okay, in this type of relative clause, we don't use that. Instead, we use who for person and which for things. But if we use it, we cannot drop the relative pronoun, even if it is the object of the clause. Okay, it can also go after the subject and after the object. For example, my brother who lives in Johor Bahru secured a job in oil and gas field. So who lives in Johor Bahru here is the relative clause, which is after the subject of the sentence, which are my brother. So basically, if we don't tell about who lives in Johor Bahru, the information doesn't change the meaning at all, because my brother secured a job in oil and gas field. So it's just the extra information in the sentence. Okay, so now we're going to see the second example, which are relative clause after the object. Example, I love eating at a Korean cuisine restaurant, which I went into yesterday. So which I went to yesterday is the relative clause in the sentence. Okay, after the object, which are Korean cuisine restaurant. Okay, Korean cuisine restaurant is the object of the sentence. We put the relative clause after the object of the sentence. See, don't put which I went to yesterday. The sentence is still right, because it is just additional information about the sentence. So now we move to the next part.
Okay, so the first relative pronoun is who. The word who can be used for subject or object pronoun for people. Is either for defining clause and non-defining clause. For example, in a sentence, they caught the man who stole Adam's watch. So who here is being used as subject, which refers to the man. The next relative pronoun, which is which. Yeah, you see that I use which in the sentence that I said just now. So that's one of the example of how we can use which. So which can be used in subject or object pronoun for things. So it's a little bit different for who, which is for people, which is for things. For example, I bought the pen, which is on the desk. Which is subject referring to the pen. So the pen is a thing. So we use which. We can use who, and it can be used either for defining clause and non-defining clause. Relative pronoun is whom. Whom is a little different from who, because it is used for only object pronoun for people and only in non-defining relative clause. For example, the handsome man whom you told me about got married yesterday. So, whom here is an object pronoun, because the sentence after whom you told me about got married yesterday. You is the subject and told me is the verb. Yes, and whom is referring to the handsome man, which is the object for the sentence. Yes. The next pronoun is whose. Whose is the subject of the relative clause, and it replaces a possessive. Whose is for both people and things. For example, the little boy whose toy was lost is mad. So, whose in this sentence refers to the subject little boy, and the word after whose refers to belongings to the little boy. And the last relative pronoun is that. That can be used as subject or object pronoun for people, sentence, restrictive relative clauses. For example, I love the woman that is over there. To the relative adverbs. And the first one is where. Where is used to introduce an adjective clause describing a place. For example, I know the house where he lives. One is when introduces an adjective clause describing a time. For example, they are talking about their experiences when life was simpler. Yes. Relative adverb is why. Why introduces an adjective clause describing a reason. The keyword is reason. For example, in a sentence, you, yes, you are the reason why I am the best. So there are some infos and mistakes to avoid for this particular chapter. So actually, for non-defining relative clauses, we can ditch the relative pronoun. For example, like typical way of writing a sentence, I bought the pen that I loved. Actually, you can ditch the word that and just say, I bought the pen I loved. It's still correct. And another thing, um, don't misplace the relative clause. For example, the confusing sentence, I saw a car on the road which was damaged. So is the car damaged or the road is damaged here? So it's confusing. So we can instead write the sentence like this. I saw a car which was damaged on the road. So it is specifically for the car that is damaged, not the road. Yeah, that's all.
So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adam Harit bin Kevin, and for my part is about to explain explain what the example and application when using the related clause. So, there is a few of example and also application we use using the related clause. So the first sentence is about the is Josh whose brother went to the school with me. And the second is about the is Josh whom you met at our house last year. So whose and whom is preferable to talk about people. So using when have a people or have a name of people is suitable for that. And the third is about England won the cup in 1966. It was the year when we got married. So when is also related clause that using to tell about date or time. And the fourth is, do you remember the place where we caught the train? Where also related clause that explain to the place, to tell about the place. And the five is Mercury is the woman that discovered radium. That also is related clause. But somehow this sentence that that also have a specialist can use we can use for the people, and also that also we can use for the things. And the lastly, there must be a reason why she turned down the offer. Why? Also related clause, but somehow we can see why a part of 5W1H question indicates why is about to tell the reason in related clause. And another example as we look at the paragraph, the sentence, we use the related clause. Take a look for a minute how we can use related clause in the sentence to make a paragraph. So there's a few like who, which, who, and was. Uh, is a related clause. So the lastly, this is the sentence that we can use, that we using the related clause. Have a look a minute to how we can use to apply in our essay or our story to make them look perfect. So there is an example related clause that with who whose some of few example of related clause. So I think that's all. Thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.